Good morning, everyone. I'm Shanae Bryan. I'm the contracted epidemiologist for GOHS, and right now I'm going to discuss briefly about the problem identification process, a component of the application, excuse me. I do want to say that there may be some overlap with what Amanda Jackson may present right after me, but that's intentional. The goal here, and this has been a repeated theme as we're discussing applications, right, is alignment. So if it sounds redundant of whatever Amanda may say, it's intentional. So the idea of the problem identification, there's a data requirement, and I think that's been also another repeated theme throughout the presentation so far, is that GOHS is data driven. We look at what FARS is saying, what traffic records are saying. We look at even what you're observing on college campuses and such as a driver to make decisions on what strategies and countermeasures and innovative approaches that we could take to address specific issues in your jurisdiction, whether it's a campus, a city, a county, or even statewide. The requirement that we're looking for, the minimum requirement, I must say, is that we are seeking to look at least 3 years of consecutive data, the most recent data you have available. Right now on FARS, what's published is 2018 FARS data, and for those with FARS is the fatality, I've been on this so much I think I forgot. Thank you, analytic reference system. Yes, but basically what it's showing are the fatalities that's happening statewide, nationwide actually. And for NHTSA, the bigger picture here is to compare the state of Georgia with other southern states across the region. And when we look at what you do in the applications and what GOHS is funding and supporting your programs to do is what is working, and other states are actually going to be able to learn from this. And Amanda's going to touch on that when we talk about activities, objectives, and what you're doing in order to accomplish these specific problems that you're going to identify here. So the main goal is, again, to show at least 3 years of consecutive data using the most recent data available, but also to be able to articulate and demonstrate your knowledge of the problems happening in your area. And how you would demonstrate that is through the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. So when we talk about who, we're most likely looking at the demographic population, whether it's age, a specific class of folks, a specific, how could I say, group, older adults or 55 plus. Is Elizabeth in here? No, 50, she's not, okay, that's another thing. And when we're specifically talking about let's say pedestrians, the way how you approach children, pedestrian injuries is completely different than how you would approach older adult pedestrians. So this is giving that, demonstrating your knowledge of the problem in your area. What, a good way to look at what, NHTSA, we are required to track at least 14 core performance measures. And for us, when we talk about what, we're looking at speeding, alcohol, pedestrian, bicyclist, what are the other words? Seatbelt, unrestrained use, overall fatalities, rural fatalities, urban fatalities. Those are what we're talking about when we're asking what is the problem. When, that's a little bit harder to get with the data available, but basically we're looking at the time of day and even the seasons of when these incidents are occurring. Where? Just to point out where, we're looking at specific locations. Sometimes you could do lat long, sometimes you could do street type roads or county level. The more specific and narrow and you could hone into where the problems are occurring, the better your problem identification narrative will be. And lastly, why? That's kind of hard to speculate. But if you could do your best, distracted driving, for instance, the growth of technology, there are a lot of reasons that we could suspect of why these certain problems are occurring. This is a good time to point to the problem identification handout that's in your packet. The Problem Id Worksheet, I believe it's about 3 pages. Yeah. So we adopted this problem ID from another state, but we made it a little bit specific towards Georgia. And here, we want to encourage you to use this as a guide and as a tool when you're developing your problem identification narrative. And what that basically means is for whatever problem that you're observing in your jurisdiction, in your area, is to fill out as much of this data that's applicable to your approach. Right. Usually this is supposed to happen before you decide your approach, but I'm pretty sure everybody has an idea of what they want to do while they are here. But here, what you want to do is to put the data points, as much data points as relevant to the problem that you suspect is happening in your area, and also try to compare it. Try to justify why it's a problem. By saying that there's 18 speed fatalities in this area, that's one thing, but to say that there's a growth in speed fatalities, or compared to the Georgia rate, this is higher, really trying your best to emphasize and compare data, whether it's either trended specifically in your jurisdiction or comparing it to other jurisdictions to justify why more funding or resources should be focused in your area. After you develop your narrative, so you could also, this is going to be available online shortly, but you could also attach this to your application as well. But we need a narrative. In the ego screen, when you're doing your application, you have to translate all these data points into a paragraph-ish, 3, 5, 4 paragraphs. to basically, if you think about it, if your program is successful, we want other states to be able to read the work that you're doing and to relate to the problem that you are writing or that you're describing. So the more descriptive as you could be, and in this narrative, it will be helpful not only for us as those who are scoring the applications, but also for successful work that's happening so that other states and other people could replicate it, or even other agencies, law enforcement agencies, could replicate that as well in their area. After all that is done, in EGOS, there's an opportunity within the platform for you to upload this information. So you could upload graphs and charts, because that previous screen only is a copy-paste of the narrative. But here, if you actually have some figures, some maps, some heat maps, some problem spot maps, you could upload it there as well. And of course, like I said, this data sheet here.